Hello. Hello. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Ah, you can. Excellent. How's everybody doing? You okay? How's your lives? Things here are profoundly busy, but that's because I am kind of trying to tie up all the loose ends professionally and personally prior to, believe it or not, playing shows again. It seems surreal to even think of that, but it's a totally different world. Like the last time I was on tour was February of 2020, and putting together this run for what's coming up is really quite fascinating because the protocols that go into touring during this period are super extensive. For example, you can't be insured, obviously, for COVID, but there's so many stipulations to doing it that vary from country to country that we have to have contracts between ourselves and crew and band and everything that allows us to have contingency plans in case somebody gets sick. For example, we need to have backup players for everybody and at a moment's notice. And there has to be a dialogue between everybody that we have to stay in a bubble while we're touring, and specifically me. So I think that this touring period for me is going to be essentially Devin Townsend in a hamster ball, and they're just going to roll me into the hotel and then roll me onto stage, right? So that's going to be an interesting new experience. But we are in a interesting time. So I'm finishing light work. I've been working on that for a long time, and that's a very new project for me in terms of like the process that it went through. And it was an experimental process for me working with a producer. And towards the end of last year, I was mixing it, and then when I was listening to it, I realized that I was unhappy with three of the songs. So yeah, we'll call it the Hamster Ball Tour. That's great. Um, I was unhappy with three songs, so I've been trying to write three more songs for it, but prior to leaving in April. And uh, because I'm in a new space here, and because of moving and because of all the chaos, what I've been trying to focus on over the past couple of weeks is how do I find some sort of degree of routine? Because the whole chaotic aspect of this past couple of years spent at home has evolved into a whole new kind of routine daily, that now trying to sort of shift that back to playing music and rehearsing and getting my voice back and all these things is a mind bender. Because prior to moving, I was, you have your place that you would go. You have your coffee at this place in the morning or whatever, like you're sitting on that couch or whatever. When everything's chaos, I'm surprised at how having to redefine my routine threw me into a tailspin. So a lot of the effort now is just like, okay, well, how do you find a routine? And so that's what I've been doing. And I've got a stream, which is February 5th, and I've been working on that every day. And that, like I think I've discussed with some of you before, is really intense because that album, on an emotional level, was super heavy for me. But on a production level, I had lost all the information years ago in a flood, and so I have to recreate it. And recreating something that was that dense to begin with is something else too, right? Going to see you in Dublin in a couple of months. Your approach to creativity has been a real shining light for me over the years. Thank you very much. Hello, Devin Townsend, my favorite Disney princess. That's right. I am frozen in my ways. All right. So I got a couple things before we'll get to a Q&A, because some people had some questions about the stream last time and the process that I was using when I was writing demos and things. Um, there's a couple things coming up this week. So I'm finishing the Infinity. I'm practicing the Infinity stream. I start singing again today. So if you're interested, if you go to devintownsendstore.com, there's tickets there. It's all the Infinity with the Infinity EP, February 5th, noon PST. It follows up after the Ocean Machine stream from last year. And then after Infinity, I'll do Physicist and then Terria, and just keep going, right? Um, so I made the egregious error the other day of asking people what their opinions on what are they, NFTs on Twitter, and you could have been forgiven for thinking I had asked if it was okay if I just started stabbing people's mothers, because people really didn't like it. And the thing is, for me, I don't know anything about it. I've got a friend of mine, Mike St. John, who's deeply into it now, and a bunch of bands that are deeply into it. And you're either in one of two camps. Either in this, it's grift and it's bullshit and it's a scam, or you get people saying, "Oh, there's a lot of potential for creativity in that realm," and blah blah blah. The thing is, I don't know. Like, I have no idea. So far, the only thing I know is the negativity of it is gross, and I'm not a huge fan of that. But I wanted to talk to you guys first about it. So after I put that thing up on Twitter, and I realized everybody was just like, basically, fuck you for even just writing it down. I was like, wow, this is super intense. And so I got a bunch of text messages from Matt, who I've known for quite a few years, who sings for Avenged Sevenfold, and he said, "Well, I'd like to talk to you about it." And I said, "Well, I don't know anything about it." He says, "Well, there's a lot of things that people don't know about it." And I said, "Well, why don't you come on my podcast, and I'll ask you all the questions, and I'll tell you all the things that I think, about the environmental things that I think are gross about it, and and I'll just give you my opinion, and you can just tell me what you think." And so if anybody has questions about it, yeah, so someone just said they saw a bunch of people got ripped off from Ozzy's NFT. So my reason for even bringing this up is not because I'm saying I want to do NFTs, guys. Come on, I'm just like, I don't know about it, but I do know that as that Web 3.0 and that technology starts to emerge, it would be good for me, and I think a lot of us, to be informed about it. Like, just, and because I don't know anything about it, there's somebody that I know that is deep into it. And so I'm going to grill him and ask him questions. And I guess he'll be the first guest on my podcast. How cheesy is that? But Matt, uh, his last name is not Shadows, but I think he goes by Matt Shadows, will be on the podcast. I'm going to do it on Thursday, and then I'll put it out on YouTube. And so if you guys have questions that you want me to ask him, because I'm going into this totally, like, all I know is that Ozzy is putting them out and people getting ripped off and everybody's angry about it. And some people think it's great and most people think it sucks, but I don't know anything about it. So I'm going to have him on. I'm going to ask him a bunch of questions about it. And that's on Thursday. And then I'll put it out. And if you guys have questions, send them to me on Twitter. I'll ask them and maybe we can get some information on it. I don't know. So that's Thursday. There's another Matt in my life, Matt Heffy from Trivium. And he wants me to be on his podcast on Friday. So Thursday, there's going to be one Matt on my podcast. And then Friday, I'm going to be on the other Matt's podcast. So if you, or is it podcast or Twitch? It might be Twitch. So if you are following Matt Heffy on Twitch, I'll be on there Friday at 2:30. And the best dad joke for me ever is 2:30 is the best time to go to the dentist, and I've used it so many times. Tooth hurty. I've used it so many times that most people in my life uh, hate me specifically for that. All right. So people are saying NFTs are part pyramid scheme, part new technology. Environmental side is bad. See, all these things like I totally hear that. But then I also have other people who are just going, well, there's a bit of misinformation about that, and here's the reasons why. But I'm not pro or con it. I really like learning about things, right? So I don't know about it, and I think there's a lot of people that don't. So it might be an opportunity for us to get a different perspective on it, whether or not it's right or wrong. And one of my biggest things that I see in society in general lately is people. There's not a lot of dialogue between people that have differing points of view. You know, whether or not it's on guns or drugs or vaccines or governments or whatever. It's like it seems like it's the camps are so black and white that I think a little bit of dialogue that's rational could probably help people come to some conclusions on their own without just sort of falling into whatever narrative is popular, right, or appropriate. But the thing is, I don't know. So I'm going to talk to him about it, and any questions you can ask me, and I'll ask him. All right, so that's where I'm at. Anything else? Oh yeah, Valentine's Day. If people want cameos, I'm going to start that after the Infinity stream. So if you want to see me look very much like this, saying things, then there's that. All right. So okay, let's see. Let's see what we've got here for questions. So go ahead and ask me whatever you want because I'm here for an hour. Then I got to practice the Infinity Stream because there's a couple songs on there that suck to sing. Suck to sing. So I'm convincing my 50-year-old voice and throat to do things that I could barely do when I was 24. So we'll see. Okay. Do you talk to Blind Boy much? It was a real surprise hearing him on the latest work. I don't talk to him a lot, but we talk. And he came to Vancouver and we hung out for a bit. I think he's brilliant. I absolutely love the guy. I think what he does with his podcast is really helpful and healthy. I think that he's an advocate for things that are coming from a place of experience, and his work in the mental health realm. And not only that, but Rubber Bandits are great. But my favorite things that he did were his TV shows. I thought they were just so good. Not only just the game show, but like I just think he's just one of the brilliant people around. So I asked him to be involved because I was just a fan, right? So there's that. Is the hardest one to sing Unity? Yeah, well, it's hard because the vocals are in my head. No, Unity, of course, is an instrumental song. So hardest ones are Star Child and Dynamics. And I don't think I can hit those high notes in Star Child, so I may have to fudge that one a little bit. All right. What song on the Infinity Stream are you least looking forward to performing? Changes daily, but it's also interesting for me having to revisit these albums. How, I mean, each one is so different. Like Ocean Machine is a very linear piece of work, right? It's a lot of songs, and it has a real sort of ebb and flow that is supposed to be sort of aquatic sounding. And Infinity was the soundtrack to I guess on one hand you could say it was like some sort of like awakening, and then on the other hand you could say it was a nervous breakdown, right? So it was somewhere between the two. And so by working on this one again, with all of them I reconnect with that time, and it's interesting how it makes me feel because you're sort of there again, and you're like, right, I remember that and what that was meaning to me. And I think the thing is, because it's been so many years since these records, I go into it thinking that it's not going to affect me emotionally in a real overt way. But by reopening up these sessions and by learning these songs again, I realize how much each one of these songs has kind of shaped my identity in a sense. Like Soul Driven or any of these songs, it's like they were just such humongous parts of my life during that period, that to go there again, I realized that it's not my personality in it that I am affected by, because that's, a lot of it's immature, right? But what it is it's still the intent of the song is still there, and it's still super heavy to me. And Infinity in particular is, I was like, man, that was a heck of a thing, right? Let's see. Will the quarantine songs from YouTube be released as an album sometime, or will they be Lightwork bonus disc? Well, I've written so much for Lightwork, and a lot of the songs that were part of the YouTube things in one form or another became part of that session. So or Sober or Honey Bunch and things like this, I reworked, and that became part of that glut of material that I was doing with Lightwork. And so the bottom line is all that stuff will be out eventually. And I think by the time we get to the end of the Devolution series, I'll put all the original stuff out as well, because I know for myself that sometimes I really love demos, and then when I hear it redone, I'm thinking, that's cool. I see why you did that, but I had an emotional attachment to the demo, therefore I'd like to hear that too, right? So, all right. Have you ever used Choir VST with Word Builder? If so, is it good? Trying to figure out if I should buy it. Well, okay. That's a very specific question. I appreciate you asking, because when I was making the first Ziltoid record, yes, I had a limited budget and I wanted to do the record entirely independently. So I bought a pod, like a Line 6 pod. I bought an iMac, an SM7 microphone, a 6176 preamp, which I still use, and I bought the East West Symphonic Choirs package. It was like $1,000, because I thought this word builder thing is ideal. I could put in Ziltoid and a massive choir will sing Ziltoid. At least in my head, that's what I thought it was going to be. And now I don't know if it's changed since when I used it, but it didn't work great. I would type in Ziltoid and it'd be like, Ziltoid. It was like really ghetto. So maybe it's gotten better since then, but I was really disappointed by it because I spent so much money on that. That was like a big part of my expenditure for Ziltoid, because I thought if I could have a choir like this, I could say what I wanted. I mean, in theory, that would be brilliant, but I really found it to be clunky. Maybe they've changed it, but that's my personal experience with it. Do you have lyrics for the past Twitch? Could we get a teaser? You mean the one that I did last time? I think it was up on the screen, like when I was writing it, because I haven't looked at it since. But I wrote it on Notepad, and I think it's on the screen. So if you watch the Twitch again, the lyrics appear there somewhere. I don't remember where they are. What's the likelihood that you'll work together with Gene, given his departure from Testament? I love Gene. I will always love Gene. We spent some of the weirdest and best years of my life together, and he's just one of my favorite human beings ever, and one of my favorite drummers ever. But I don't think we're in the same place as we were with each other at one point, and that's that's great. It's fine. It happens. I think that Gene is an in-demand cat that should be getting the amounts of money that he wants for his skill set, because when we were together, man, nobody really got a lot of money, and him the most. He put in so much time, and there was nothing there really. So I hope that Gene Hoglan has everything in his life that he wants come true, because he's a brilliant drummer and a brilliant guy, and he's a great friend. But I don't think so. I don't think we got a lot to say with each other right now. Who knows? Plus, we're in different parts of the world. I got a weird question. In the song Flight, there's a small part where Che's voice sounds super distorted. Why did you choose this, and why at that part? What word was that? With my decision, I think it was. So what I've done throughout productions that I've been involved with is, if there's a technical glitch on something, and I can't get rid of it, I make it a feature in a sense. And there was a there was a vocal thing there that happened that I loved the performance, but I couldn't get rid of the artifact on the voice. So I distorted it and made it sound like I put a reverb on that distortion as well, just to make it sound like intentional. And you could look at it as saying, oh, it was a mistake and whatever, but I get asked about that one line a lot, which means that on some level, um, it was cool. And not only that, it's like, not only that, the word, I think it was decision. Having that distorted, I thought was an interesting underline to that sentiment. Um, I did the same thing on Ocean Machine too. Like in the beginning of Funeral on the Ocean Machine record, you'll hear the guitar, that sort of echoey, sort of back and forth thing. And then on the side, on one side, you'll hear a distortion that goes, and then another side goes, that's sort of like an answer. And what that was I had gotten the DAT tape back from the master mix, and there was static on it that sounded like a mistake. So I thought at that point we weren't on computers, we were working on ADATs. So as opposed to trying to recreate that because it was too late, as opposed to cutting that part out, anytime there was a distortion, I would accent it with a digital glitch and make it sound intentional. So I think a lot of my production slash engineering style is happy accidents, man. Bob Ross, man. How do you deal with writer's block? Well, I've been dealing with it for a while now because moving and building and chaos and everything. It's like all my bandwidth emotionally and intellectually go into digging or packing or any of these sorts of things, and there's very little left at the end of the day to try and articulate those things through sound. But I think the biggest thing that I've had to learn when it comes to writer's block, and if you have it, I suggest you follow suit, is if you're like me, which I'm sure you are as an artist, you'll think to yourself when you're in the midst of writer's block, how did I ever write a song? How did I ever create anything? Because I don't even know how to do it. Like, I don't know how to write because every time I pick up a guitar, there's nothing. It's the same four shapes that I've been playing for years, or same chord structures, and it's the same sort of riffs that I've been doing, except not as cool, and all those sorts of things. So there's two things that I can suggest for writer's block. One is do it every day, even if it sucks, and finish it. So that's typically what I do. Like, I write songs and write songs and write songs and write songs, and they're all average. But by finishing them, typically the next burst of inspiration that I get is behind the shrapnel. So it's about purging these ideas, as tepid as they may seem to you at the time. By getting them out of your system, it's that purge that then will reveal what it is that you're trying to say. But also don't pressure yourself into it, because it'll take sometimes years, right? Like, just keep writing, nothing. I suck, I got nothing, I can't write. How did I ever write anything? Listen to something you wrote before and you're like, how did that even happen? Like, how do humans do that? But just by grinding is one technique. And the other, and this is something that I also like to do, is I like to find a new sound. So, my favorite guitar for me is this one, right? You've seen it. This is the Framus one. I love this guitar. It's a incredible instrument. It sounds just so good. But there's songs that I've written on that, right? So there's like a lot of baggage isn't the right word because it's disparaging, but there's a lot of energy that has gone into and come out of that guitar. Like, I did all the order of magnitude stuff on it. So as much as it's the best guitar that I own, when I pick it up, a lot of times what comes out of that guitar is the songs that I wrote on it. Um, so what I try and do sometimes is I try and mix it up. Like I don't collect guitars. I only have guitars that I use, and if I don't have them, I get rid of them, right? Because I mean, I only need a guitar and a couple of tunings, and I got more than I need, right? So, but if I can get something new, sometimes music comes out of that. So whether or not I buy it or it gets given to me or I borrow it from a buddy, like me and a bunch of friends, like Beeve, my buddy who was in DTP, we've known each other since we were kids, but we always would and still do trade guitars to see if there's any riffs that come out of it, right? And then once I have an instrument that I feel like, oh, this is something, this is cool. What about this guitar do I like? Maybe it's the aerodynamics of it, maybe it's the sound, maybe it's the funkiness, whatever. Then I try and create a new sound. And this is one of the reasons why I like the digital stuff so much. I try and create a new sound that can be inspiring in some way because Ocean Machine, Infinity, Ocean Machine, Infinity, uh, City, and Physicist were all written with one sound that I had stumbled across. It was like a PV 5150 split into a GP 100, and it's this big echoey sound. And I'm doing the Neural DSP plugin where we're replicating that exactly. So when that comes out next year, it'll be that exact sound, which is wicked. But then I wrote so much with that I was like, anytime I pick up the guitar, it's the same songs that are coming out, same sort of riffs, right? So for Terria, I got a Strat. I got this, it was maybe $1,000. It's this gray Fender Strat. I don't even know where it is anymore. And I ran that through the same rig. Ran it through the 5150 and the GP 100. And it had this different vibe, right? It had a whammy bar and like all this sort of stuff. And so Terria came out of the Strat. And then after that, the next significant guitar sound that was inspiring to me was for Ziltoid because it was just the pod and it was weird, this weird little alien box. And so that was what I did for Ziltoid. Still use a GP 100. But the biggest shift since that GP 100 sound for me was for the album Key. Because at that point, I had a Strat and I started getting interested in old amps, right? Like old Fender amps. And as opposed to having the GP 100 echo sound, I used different things. I used a pedal and a reverb and then these stereo speakers. And it was just a really cool new vibe for me, right? And so now what I'm trying to do to get out of writer's block is, I got sent a couple of guitars. Check these out. I was going to show you this, right? So I think I've showed you this one. I've been playing this one quite a bit. This Aristides. It's an amazing guitar. I love it, right? And my favorite guitar is still the Framus. But again, it's like I've written so much on that whenever I pick it up, I'm playing the same songs. I'm playing Evermore or whatever. So there's that Aristides. That's cool. Prestige is the company that I work with in Vancouver who makes the acoustic guitar. You're gonna laugh at this. So I went there, and Mike's a good guy, and he was like, "We've made this guitar that is called a coupe. I think it is. It looks like a double cutaway sort of Gibson thing, and you can take it home." And I was like, "Oh, that's wonderful. Maybe I'll find some songs in it." And what I did was when I sleep, a lot of times I'll get songs in dreams, and I'll wake up and I'll sing them into my phone or whatever. But I like having a guitar near me while I'm sleeping. So if I wake up with a riff, I can pick up the guitar and play it. But the problem is, inevitably, the guitar body is too cold. So when I pick it up in the middle of the night, because I'm just wearing my ginch, right? Like it's too cold against my belly. So what I did with this Prestige guitar, because I like it, it's a really cool guitar, is I covered it with fun fur so that I can play it. I can play it at night. So this is I don't know what to call this. you know, the Chewbacca or something. But it's a great guitar. It's really great. But this is the one that I have beside me when I'm asleep. So when I wake up, uh, yeah, it's perfect. Somebody says, but it's a really cool guitar because they you know, it's got these cool pickups and it's like a telly construction, but it's super thick neck and it's like a real, it's like roasted quarter sawn Canadian company, but it's a fantastic guitar. But I told Mike, the guy who owns the company, I was like, dude, I covered that guitar with fun fur and I keep it beside my bed. And he was, he looked bummed actually. He was just like, oh, you put fur on the guitar, eh? And I was like, yeah. So I'm going to use that for the song Unity on the Infinity stream, right? And the last thing I'll say about this, because I know there's a lot of questions, is I've been trying to get a new sound to find something inspiring. So the pickups that I did with Fishman, Transcendent set, there's the coolest sound on it, other than bridge position in humbucking mode, which is like the metal sound. The coolest sound of these pickups is when you split the coil and you put it into the middle position, and it gets this big sort of like, let's see. So I've been working on a sound to sort of get myself inspired again because I got to write 3 more songs for Lightwork, and this is where I've ended up lately. Is it's like it's not as much distortion. It's got sort of like a weird chorusy sort of thing on it. It's split coil in the middle position, and it just has this really sort of rainy day vibe to it, like that. Sort of cool. Oh, and I got this recently too. It's a piece of rubber that's like a guitar stand, so you just put it on your desk and then you can lean the guitar up against it. It's like $5 or something, but it's like, it's great because then I can just kind of do that, right? All right, so that's my answer to that question. It took me 40 minutes. Okay, let me move on here, see where we're at. Someone says guitars are tuned to C, G. Yeah, oh no. The tuning is C, G, C, G, C, E, not D. All right, so let's just see what someone else says. The furry the furry guitar should really become a thing. You know what? It's so I mean, I like little projects, right? Like, unfortunately, this little piece of fur, maybe it's its tail, it's coming off now. But I like projects. So I went to Fabricland in Coquitlam about a year ago, and I got a bolt of this fun fur, and it's super furry, right? But it's like when you're writing songs in the middle of the night, I gotta tell you, it's like, you know, it's like a warm hug from a prestige instrument, right? Let's see what people say. When I introduce people to music, I like to show them Higher and Shitstorm for the extreme differences. If you had to choose 2 songs to show the differences between your work, what would they be? You know what? I would say Shitstorm is a good extreme. Oh My Fucking God's also a good extreme. I think you could pair that with Infinite Ocean off of Ghost, or you could take Info Dump and Heart Baby. Those are that'd be pretty good. Is this upcoming tour Dream Theater? Will there be some cross pollination with you and members from Dream Theater? I'd love to see and hear that. So, the guys that I know in Dream Theater, I've never met the bass player. I don't think anybody has. I talked to the singer once, but just in passing. I did John's Guitar Universe thing in Long Island a couple years back, and yeah, he's cool. We get along. Yeah, I think I really like John actually. I've known the drummer for a long time, and he's funny. He's a funny guy. But I actually talked to Jordan quite a bit. I like Jordan a lot. He's and I like his family and everybody. So it's like, But in terms of cross pollination musically, I mean, I've said this before, and I mean, I'll say it again. um, I rarely feel a need to do that. You know what I mean? And I guess to some people, it thinks like it should be inevitable, where they think, okay, well, if you get a bunch of characters whom I enjoy their output and put them together, it's going to be like that times five. But oftentimes I don't find that to be the case. Oftentimes I find it's like either people are respectful of each other to the point where they aren't interacting completely with synergy, or it's just nice to talk to somebody whom has had similar experiences to you, and therefore it almost seems to taint it to have to bring music into it. And if we do, like there's a couple of musicians that I play with fairly regularly. Well, prior to this whole, you know, to the whatever it is, the end of the world or whatever that we've been going through. But I would go to them, and like five or six of us who are all in bands, and we all have, you know, cool things going on. We jam, but we don't record it, and we don't tell people about it. That's kind of like that makes it cool, because then at that point you're doing it because you're still wanting to communicate musically, as opposed to having some sort of agenda where it's like, hey, we should do this, we should get together and put out something, right? Like I get asked to be in these sort of groups, but it just seems like it moves too quick. It's like, you know, things need to gestate over time for it to be authentic in a way, I guess. All right. That furry guitar has some ZZ Top vibes. Yes, yes, sir, it does. Wild alien. All right. Been playing around with all fifths. Lovely spacing. Got to whack some pretty thick strings on it though. Yeah, you know what I find though is and I'm not I'm not in the total minority here, but I think that there is a misconception that if you use a thicker string, it's going to sound heavier. To me, really thick strings just go boing. They don't go crunch, they go boing, right? So a lot of times people are like, yeah, I'm tuned down to B and I'm using like 105 through 62 or something, right? Like some absurdly heavy telephone wire that you can drive a truck under the 12th fret and whatever. But it doesn't go crunch to me. It just sounds like boing, right? So what I do is I use 10 through 52 no matter what I'm doing, and then I use an Evertune, right? So in C I use 10 through 52. In B I use 10 through 52. In open A I use 10 through 52. In standard I use 10 through 52. They all feel a little different, but I'm used to how 10 through 52s feel in that tuning. So as soon as it's heavier, it just feels a little wonky to me, right? All right. Let's see. Is it going to be the same band for the Empath tour for this run of shows, or different people? It's going to be different people. So here's where we're at with the touring. I have a lot to say, and I want to present the work to the people who've been waiting. And it's extremely hard right now to book tours. Now, for a number of reasons. First off, the amount of venues has gone down. Second of all, the COVID thing. So if anybody gets COVID in the tour, they have to quarantine for 10 days, right? So if I get it, we can't play. If drummer gets it, we have to get another drummer. So all of these things became logistical hurdles to try and surmount, right? So this is what my solution is for the interim. And I don't know what you think about this, but I think it's actually kind of cool. So as opposed to having to bring people everywhere with me, I'm thinking I'm just wherever I go, I'm going to hire local people who are in bands that I know. So if I'm in America, I'll be with like an American band, an American crew. If I'm in Europe, I'll have a European band, a European crew. Canada, Canadian band, Canadian crew. Australia, India, Asia, wherever. Because a lot of the reason why I really wanted to experiment with the bloodstock set the way that I did is because I wanted to see if that would work. I wanted to see that if I did enough prep work at home, that I could bring in people who I'd never met or I'd worked with only sporadically, and see if they could learn, and we could do this right. Now, the thing is, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, I want to audition for it or whatever," but it's not going to be like that. It's going to be people that I know. It's going to be people in bands that I know can do the job, and I don't have to go through the rigmarole of like the social implications of a bunch of people I'd not met, right? But but I think that that is going to be the way that I can at least have a presence and tour in places, because a lot of times now bands won't be able to tour. Like, you're not going to see international bands in some places because the costs of getting band and crew there, like to Australia for example, and then everybody has to be there for 10 days or whatever it is so um is so over the top, and diesel and the supply chain and strings and everything is so expensive now. But if it's just me, if I can just go there and then be like, okay, this is the crew, this is the band, we'll play a bunch of shows. And it worked at Bloodstock, worked really well, Bloodstock. So that's what I'm working towards now. But the shows that I'm going to do first at the Royal Albert Hall are going to be like two. It's going to be one set is going to be, you know, my favorite songs, like the popular ones, I guess. And the second one's going to be like the deeper cuts, and I'm going to go into that a little further this week. But it's all being sort of put together now, and my whole trip right now is getting myself emotionally, physically, and vocally in shape for it. So when we get back out there, I can do it, right? Still want to hear that song with Michael. Well, I think what you're referring to is a couple years back, right when I was working on Empath, I went to a bunch of places and just to stay with friends. I went to a bunch of different countries and just stayed with buddies and stayed on their couches. And Mike from Opeth and me have always got along. So he invited me to come stay with him and his family at his place. And he was in an apartment. And we recorded potentially the shittiest song ever. And I keep telling him, I was like, send it to me, man. I'm going to put it out. And he keeps telling me, he's like, oh, I can't find it. And I think he just doesn't want it to come out because it fucking sucks. And I love it. But I didn't get a copy. I should have gotten a copy because he'd be doomed if that was the case. But he's not on social media. But if anybody talks to him, just say, hey, put that song out, man. I don't even remember what it was called. It was some Swedish word. It was really bad. It's probably about shitting, I'm sure. What is that swanky black telly in the background? Oh, it's one I was just playing. If you're just new to it, yeah, let's say it's this Aristides one they built for me. It's really great. It's super modern. It's like a space age Telecaster, and it's great. And so I've been using that a fair amount. It's like, Framus is still. I love how that thing sounds, but that's a fun guitar, that telly. All right. Hey Dave, you shared your GP chain here. Could you tell us what's going on in the graphic EQ block at the end of that chain? Sure. Let me just look it up here. So I'll have to put that on the screen. And how do I do that? I go new scene. Bam. Oh, there's me. Oh, there I go. All right. So let's see if I can find that patch. So I'll use the Infinity Stream final. What is going on? Okay, yeah. So what I do is I'm just getting rid of all the low and the low mid, because then it doesn't compete with the low end of the dry guitar. There you go. Bam. No secrets at sea, ladies and gentlemen. Especially for sea men. All right, let's see what else we got here. Cheers, humans, someone says. Yes. 70,000 tons was so great. Yeah, no, that was another example. We rehearsed for 2 days. That was Dirk, Wes, and Kyle. We had 2 days of rehearsal, and it worked. So in a perfect world, I've got a consistent band and crew, and we're touring everywhere, and it's easy, and we can have all the production, all that shit. But as I'm sure a lot of you have experienced, the last couple of years have thrown things for a tailspin. And if we don't find solutions, I'm just not going to be able to play places. So my solution is to do this and like just have different bands wherever, and like I think it's gonna be cool, man. At least for the time being, because the next thing I'm doing is the Moth. So I started writing the Moth again, and that's a motherfucker of a project. I think you're gonna be quite interested in it. I watched the Buy a Thread show for the first time in a long time yesterday. The deconstruction show, you had puppets for the guest vocalist. Do you still have them? And did the people they represented know what they look like before you use them? No, I don't have them. Maybe I do. Maybe I do, actually. I think I might have the Tommy puppet, but it's the same puppet I use for Fred. Do the people know? No, they didn't know. They didn't know. My favorite was my favorite was my favorite was Joe, the Gajira whale, where we just put the lips on the whale with the propeller beanie. But the people that were involved with that were all buddies, and they're all cool enough that when they saw it, they got a kick out of it, right? I remember we were touring with Meshuggah in Australia, and it was the first show, and they were there we were sound checking everything, and we're doing Planet of the Apes, and all of a sudden the Fred puppet comes up. It was a good moment. All right. Okay. Can you please share how you set up your audio to play guitar on a stream? Okay, well, today it's a very complicated process. The way that I'm getting my guitar is through today is a very complicated process. I'm running through an amp in the corner that you're hearing. Oh, I see. But you see how I've got it set up? That's why it sounds weird. How I've got it set up is, here, I'll go back here, is I've got a Mackie board over here that I have my Axe-Fx 3, Axe-Fx 2, Helix, and a Kemper all being put into this. That goes into AES inputs on my Pro Tools, so I can get a direct feed, except for the Kemper, which doesn't have an AES. And then the secondary outs from those units, I run into a Mackie board, and the Mackie board is split. So one side goes to my Logic interface, so I can use it for Logic and not have to go through the whole Pro Tools Logic hate each other cat and dog thing. But the other output from the Mackie goes to a Line 6 speaker in the corner. And so so the one that I've been using, so I read the Warm Low Gain Dev Writer. So this is the patch that I was working on. And so that now is just running into the corner. But how I do the stream when I'm running Pro Tools is on OBS. I have a secondary input that is this. It's the Podcast Pro by a company called Rode, which is all hardwired in here, so I can't show you any further. But it's a reasonably inexpensive unit that when I plug it in with USB-C, it shows up as a separate interface. So I run that Mackie board that's going not only to Logic and the amplifier, but I run another headphone out of that into the Rode, so that all these things that I've got access to are now available as a new audio input on OBS through the Rode. And then I can run it, and because the computer is reasonably strong, it works. It was crashing a bit last time, but it's not too bad, right? That's how I do it. All right. Let's see what else we got going on here. Do you remember Louisville, Kentucky with SYL when only 6 people stuck around after the opening bands? I was one of those people that stayed. Yeah, so was I, man. You know what's funny? Sometimes when you're playing in places that you have a good draw, right? Like the Bloodstock show or whatever a few months back. It was, a headlining slot, and there's like thousands of people, and there's elephants on stage and all this shit. People can be forgiven for looking at that show and thinking, wow, this artist is like really made it. This is how you do it. But what a lot of times people don't see is shows like that in Louisville, Kentucky, where there's 6 people. Actually, the best one for me was, I think it was somewhere in Ontario. and I forget what tour it was on. It would have been maybe Deconstruction or Addicted or something. And we showed up to the venue, and we had a bus, and we showed up to the venue, and the stage and the venue was so small that we couldn't get, if we put our gear in there, there'd be no room for an audience, right? It was that small. And so we couldn't get it up the stairs, and I'm thinking, shit, I don't want to cancel the show. Like, I hate canceling shows. So I said to Paul, the tour manager, I was like, well, okay, well, I'll do acoustic then. If we can't get our gear on stage, I'll play an acoustic set. And the owner of the club says, okay, but we can't pay you the guarantee, which is fine because it's not the same show. And you have to stand at the door and tell people who are coming in that that's what's happening. And if they want a refund, they can have it. So I think it's like a Tuesday night or something. And I'm standing at the door, and, there's like the Miller Lite sign behind me and the whole works. And it's this tiny little shithole club. And people are coming up the stairs. And the first people that come up the stairs, it's a lady and two of her girlfriends. And I'm like, oh, hello, ladies. I just want to let you know that the band can't play tonight, but I'm happy to play acoustic. And if you want a refund, it's totally cool. And she just looked me up and down. She goes, who the fuck are you? And I remember that night, that particular occurrence happening over and over again. And when I played the show, I think we made a couple friends that night. But I think that a big part of doing this professionally is it's not the 80s anymore, it's not the 90s anymore. There's those moments that are going to keep you, it's going to keep your humility in check. And if you don't have those, I think it's very easy to sort of spin off into the ether and think that your shit doesn't stink, right? I remember, because like I said earlier, Beav and I have known each other since we were kids, and when we were when he first joined DTP, the first show that we did, I think it was Hellfest or something. It was like 60,000 people, and Kiss was playing on the other stage and all these sorts of things. And he was like, "This is awesome!" And the next day we were in, like, all of us in one room in a hotel in France for like 2 days. There's nothing to eat, and the next show sucked, and you know what I mean? It's like, so it's that ceremony of opposites that I think is really important as an artist to participate in. So yeah, I do remember that show in Louisville. And thanks for staying, man. Maybe next time. I think the next time we played in Louisville, there might have been 12 people. Okay. I have no idea what are details on guitar playing and audio processing, but it's lovely just to listen. Well, thank you. I don't really know either. I'm making it all up as I go. But I got to tell you, if there's one takeaway from this whole pandemic for me, is the amount of information that I've been forced to participate in for want of people to explain it to me. I have realized how much I have the capacity to learn things that I didn't think I was able to prior. YouTube, of course, like doing home renovation or any of these things. It's like, God, how do you hang tongue and groove pine? What's the first step? It's like, oh, okay, that's it. And then after you fuck it up, you're like, okay, well, there's something to avoid, right? But I've learned so much, and I've learned so much about technology, and it's great to feel that sort of sense of being self-contained. It's like knowing that when things go south, I've been able to solve problems that are either significantly more complicated or if not, at least I have the capacity to learn things that are complicated, has been a real boost for me intellectually, I think. Okay. Dang, I didn't get a notification. Hope I'm not too late. Brandon, you're not, but you're almost too late. I'm going to be gone in 6 minutes because I got to practice the Infinity Stream. Could use more delay. You know what? As much as you may be joking there, I don't know if you are. When I was working on this sound the other day, okay, so here was my thought process. So I said, okay, sort of a low gain, lots of echo, kind of a, I thought, you know what I need to do is, because there's 4 outputs on the Axe-Fx, and I got a bit of CPU left, I'll take 2 more outputs, and I'll run another chain off of the signal path that goes after the cab and into just a big reverb, and send those separate outputs to 2 more speakers that I'll put there. So when I'm writing and I'm just standing up there and playing, it's even bigger, right? And it's throughout my career, everybody's like, "Oh, it's too much echo. It's too much echo," and I'm like, "It's not enough echo. Not enough echo, man. Maybe in the mix we can take it down, but for writing, man, I want to be swimming in it. Calgon, take me away." Do you have any Kemper profiles available for download by chance? You know what? I used Kemper for a couple of tours, and the only thing I use it for now is when I mix, like every now and then I'll mix a band, and I've got some profiles that Wes Howe sent me and Andy Sneap sent me, and they're really like that sound, that really, that cool sound, right? But they're available online, and for me, I didn't make any for Kemper. All my work has been on Axe Effects, right? Okay. Same, just got here. No ding on the phone. Well, I'm sorry that there's no ding on your phone. Okay, let's see what else we got. What was your journey learning, or not, music theory? Well, it started for me, I suppose, when I was able to recognize an ability at a very young age to pick out melodies on the piano, right? So my grandparents had a piano, and whether it was Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or anything, given a bit of time, I could plunk out that melody. And it didn't seem particularly important to me, but I remember at the time of my grandparents thinking like, "Oh wow, that's cool, you can do that." So I learned by ear for the majority of it, but the extent of my music theory was up until recently high school. So high school band, high school choir. I played tuba for years, which is probably why I love bass still. And so I had music composition and things like that in school, but it's all the same rudimentary stuff that you learn. It's primary school musical education. When I was older, I found myself resenting, if I'm being perfectly honest, people who were schooled musicians, because a lot of times it seemed like the parameters that they placed on what was right or wrong were so stringent that if I ever had an idea that was based on something that was abstract, like, because the way I realize I start thinking is like synesthesia, where I see music as colors or shapes or whatever. And so when I explain that to an artist, I'm like, this is like a butterfly, or this is blue, or this is, a triangle, or whatever. That's what I'm trying to achieve. A lot of times they'd be like, well, what you're doing there is technically incorrect. And I'm like, well, no offense, but I don't care. Like, it sounds cool to me. And so I found that having to go through the rigmarole of convincing schooled musicians that what I was wanting to hear, albeit not correct, was still appropriate, I found fucking so frustrating. Especially when I was playing with like musicians, they'd be like, "Oh, you can't do that. That interval is wrong." I'm like, "Dude, it's not wrong. It's like you think it's wrong, but I don't care, right?" But then recently, reasonably recently, about 5 years ago, I started working on The Moth. And although I've only got a handful of things written for it, when I say I started working on it, and for those of you who don't know what it is, The Moth is a musical I'm writing. I realized that when I was working on deconstruction with the Prague Philharmonic Orchestra, and then I was working with the choirs, and then I've worked with several orchestras now. I realized really quickly that because it's so expensive and I don't have the vocabulary to explain things that are wrong, like if there's a note that's wrong and I have to say, that note's wrong, and the conductor says, what note in what instrument? I'm like, it's in the oboes, and the one that's going, ha, should be, ha. They're looking at me like I'm wearing their sweater, right? So I started taking music and orchestration classes, like a private class with a friend of mine. And it went back to rudimentary. Like that's why on my keyboard here I've got all it's all my octaves are set up, all the keys are labeled with the notes, and I had to start from the very beginning and say, okay, so what is the range of the first violins? What's the range of the second violins? What's the function of the double bass? What is marcato versus spiccato? And if you have an interval that you're trying to achieve, what's the best way to split that up, and which instrument split that up, and then what makes it augmented, what makes it diminished. And so I've been learning it at my own pace, but with the sole intention of being able to communicate my ideas more efficiently. And I think that that's the best way for me to have approached it, because I'm able to articulate a little better my fucked up ideas. So when someone says, hey, that doesn't work, I'll be like, yeah, but it will work if we just move that inversion there or whatever. So again, it's like OBS, it's like all these things. I think that continuing to learn is good because it will stave off early onset Alzheimer's. All right. Any chance of the videos of the live shows like Retinal by a Thread, etc., coming to the digital stores like iTunes one day? I believe it is, isn't it? I don't know. I'll ask. So the puzzle film I think it's going to be on Amazon Prime next month. That's the hope. So those of you who haven't seen it, I was very proud of that. I think it's really cool. MacGyver, baby. Wow, the pandemic has made you a tech whiz. Well, I don't know about a whiz, but it's amazing. The thing that I took from the amount of learning that I've had to do during this whole pandemic is how little credit I gave myself prior. I think that there's really some substance to the idea of you're limited by what you tell yourself, in a sense. And I think that I always remember this one guitar player, this guy that I met. We're kind of acquaintances, but he's like a famous guitar player and was famous in the 80s and all this. Not Steve, but, just like one of those guys, right? And I remember when I first met him, I was like, oh, what sort of amp do you use? What sort of guitar do you use? And he's like, I don't even know what type of amp. I don't even know how to change my own strings. My guitar tech does it for me. And I'm thinking to myself, you don't know how to change your strings? You've been a guitar player for 30 years and you can't change your own fucking strings? Like, did you hit your head? Like, that's ridiculous. But I think that the more you tell yourself those things, you're just kind of like, well, I guess I'm not the guy that changes strings because that's not what I do. And I think that I was guilty of that when it came to tech. I was guilty of that when it came to like fixing things. But the common denominator between all of those activities is, I really, truly believe this, a willingness to fail. Not that you want to fail, but if you do fail, it's okay. I think if you're okay with that, and then you can get back up and try it again, then I think that's how you can succeed. Morgan Ogren, what did he send? I was going to show you. It's a meme, but I can't show it to you because, yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to answer 3 more questions, and then I got to get rehearsing because it's a lot to do still in this Infinity stream. February 5th, DevinTownsendShop.com. I handed you my DevLabs CD to sign, and I'll never forget the reaction. Yeah, thank you. Oh shit, I didn't know this was still going. I was watching EastEnders. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Hey Dev, how do you think your stream would go if you just winged it without practicing? I feel like you would remember how to play all your songs off the top of your head. I really appreciate that vote of confidence. I really do, man. But that wouldn't happen. I feel like every new thing I learn, I lose something else. I learned how to run all my amplifiers through 3 different streams without latency, but I forgot what my grandma smells like in the process. It's just, which is not a huge loss from what I remember. Falling is the best way to learn. Hell yeah. Love to Morgan, all right? Here, I'm just going to take a photo of that so he can see. All right, so. All right. Okay. 2 more questions. What would be your number one advice for anyone releasing heavy music independently for the first time these days? I think, again, for those who weren't here in the beginning, I'm gonna do a podcast with Matt from Avenged Sevenfold on Thursday, so I can ask him about NFTs. Not for me, just because I don't understand them, and I don't think a lot of people do. But he really wants to talk about it, so I think it's worth like investigating things that seem foreign, because whether or not I choose to do it, it would be silly of me not to know why I choose not to do it, right? And I think the same thing applies for releasing music nowadays. On one hand, it seems like we're still sold that notion that in order to become a success in music, you go through a series of very predictable steps. You write a demo, and a lot of people don't feel this way, but there's a lot of people that still think, oh, then you get it to a record label, and then you get signed, and you get an advance, and then all this sort of shit. But that doesn't really happen from what I can tell. So in lieu of that, what do you do? Well, I think you've got to learn about all this stuff. And I think you've got to look into Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and Twitch and Twitter. And now there's a couple of those that I don't participate in. Like, I've never been on Facebook. I know that sounds like surreal, but I've never been on it. And I never had that desire. I think the first time I was on there, I got a instant message from somebody who I went to kindergarten with, and I remember thinking like, "Oh, fuck that, man! I don't want to do that." I don't want to remember me. I pissed myself when I was in kindergarten. Morgan says, "Oh, what's this?" Hang on a second. Someone says, "Say hi to you while I'm on Twitch." All right. So you can produce music on your own. There's enough tutorials on YouTube to get all the information you need. It's going to take work. Morgan says, there you go. So, and then from there, I think just take advantage of the technology. I don't think you need to follow the old guard in terms of how things were once done. And it requires a lot of thinking in terms of what you want to do, because it's kind of like wide open. You can choose what it is that you want to do, but the basis of it is always going to be the same. In my opinion, you have to be willing to emotionally be seen by an audience. And that's a hell of a thing, man. That's a hell. Specifically, if the same thing that makes you emotionally available musically is the same thing that makes you an introvert, it's a hell of a thing. But there's my advice. One more question. All right. Let's see. Yeah, here, see, it's funny. So again, when I talk about NFTs, the reason I talk about them is because I've been offered them so many times by so many people. Like, you should do this. You should do the companies call me. You should do an NFT. You're in this great position to do an NFT. And I'm like, but I don't understand them. I don't know them. And then if I ask people, one person will be like, it's a scam. It fucks up the environment. It's a pyramid scheme. It's for grifters. It's people getting taken advantage of. And I'm like, fuck that. And other people are like, it's an opportunity for a whole new revenue stream, and it's a way for interactivity for your audience and all this stuff. But it's so extreme that my point of view on it, my personal point of view on it, is I don't fucking understand it. So what I'm doing now is just asking people about it. I'm asking you about it. I'm asking people who claim to know about it. And my objective there is not to release an NFT. It's because I just want to know. That's it. That's it. So any conversations that I have about it, please keep in mind that's my objective. Quit texting me. I love him. My favorite drummer. Understandable that you have questions. It's kind of a mess and it's hard to understand. Precisely. Precisely. Yet, I think it's whether or not it's NFTs, all this is tied to an emerging technology that any of us who do music and art in 2022, 2023 would be foolish not to at least try to understand. That's my point of view. All right. Okay, so don't be like Butters. I'm kind of like Butters as it is. All right. All right. Yeah, everybody's, I get it. Everybody's saying the same thing. NFTs are exploitative and pointless. I get it. You don't have to convince me of it. I'm not trying to, I just want to, I want to see both sides. That's where I'm at. But I'm not planning on releasing one. I'm curious about things. I'm also reading a book called Quadrivium, which I think is great too, because I've always been afraid of mathematics. But that book, if you haven't read it, is really neat because it's kind of like they take each number and they break it down into what its historical significance was and how it plays in with the other numbers. I just really like to learn. That's my trip right now. And I hope that's clear when I'm talking about this. Like, there's no ulterior motive here. All right, one more question. There's a lot of NFT hate, and that is absolutely acceptable and understandable. But again, my point is just to understand it. Someone says, Butters, bitch, don't you want to start making some real fucking money? Oh, God. Okay, let's see if I can find a question here that has not something to do with fuck NFTs. Let's see. What kind of mouse do you use? There we go. So I've had this for about 10 years. The Kensington mouse. Right? Oh, here we go. It's this. It's just it's greasy. It's like you have to take the ball out every now and then because it just gets full of your finger schmutz. But I'm so used to it now that I can really fly with it, right? Like, but there's a lot of people that hate it. One last one. What extra songs are in the Infinity Stream? Sit in the Mountain? Yep. Yes, sir. And I'm working on Processional too. I'm seeing if I can get that one about that. Why is cheese better when it's melted? Last question. Sometimes it isn't, in my experience. Sometimes in a sandwich, like a cold sandwich, just a little slice of sharp cheddar, unmelted, nice and cold, that's pretty good. But when it is melted, I don't know, it's like maybe as humans we have this affinity for snot-like substances. Because I love melted cheese, right? Like when I tour, I eat vegan. And see, this is where my argument falls apart. Because if it was purely an affinity for things with a mucus-like consistency, vegan cheese would be delectable, which it isn't. It's like salty snot, which I do not like. But there you go. So, my friends, it's great to be here with you again. The next podcast is going to be with Matt Shadows on Thursday, and I'll tell him all what you feel about NFTs. Again, my point of view is I just want to learn. I have no dog in this fight at this point. There's so much hate and so much, what is the term when you put things on a pedestal? That thing. So much of that. So that's on Thursday. That's the next podcast. Infinity live stream. Infinity in its entirety. DevinTownsendShop.com. February 5th. I'm on Matt Heafy's podcast on Friday at 2:30. Best time to go to the dentist. This Friday, PST, I believe. No, Eastern time. He's on Eastern time. So it's the 2:30 minus 3. So it's not the best time to go to the dentist. And then if you want cameo stuff, I'm going to do that again starting February 5th after the stream is over. And then in terms of touring, man, it's all chaos at this point. Wish me luck trying to write 3 more songs for Lightwork, because if I get 3 more songs, it'll be a really cool record. I think it'll be a fucking awesome record. And right now, it's so close. 7 of the songs are great, but 3 songs sound like they're not with that group of material because it's a it was a very difficult process. I started writing The Moth again. The Moth is going to be the most fucked up thing and the most comprehensive piece of work that I've ever done. And we're looking probably, I'm starting it next year. So we're probably not talking till like 2024, 2025, but it's massive production, right? And really over the top and unsavory. So I hope you enjoy it. But my friends, have a great day. Have a great week. Thank you for the support. Keep your wits about you. Keep your spirits high. None of the toxic positivity shit though. And you know, don't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. Smoke them if you got them. All those platitudes. Apply the one to your life that is most appropriate. And all my love. See you soon, okay? Bye.